Hello and welcome to another Charity Digital webinar. My name is Elizabeth Carter and I'm excited to be back hosting with you all again. And this time we are looking at the prevalent topic of hybrid working and how to prepare your organization for this. I think we can all say what a crazy and unsettled year it's been for the whole world at large. And as restrictions are gradually lifting, organizations are now trying to decide the best way forward for their workers, particularly with a post-COVID June date in mind. And I would imagine that for many of us, we've settled into remote working, albeit at the beginning begrudgingly. I know I certainly did, and have overcome the challenges that we've faced with that. Maybe quite a few of us would be reluctant to go back to the office now. Maybe it'll be a relief for some of us as well, but I think it's fair to say that no one expects a return to 100% physical, traditional ways of working. So we are embracing a different, more flexible kind of approach. In fact, I was reading the news this morning and it stated that nearly all of Britain's 50 biggest firms are planning on a hybrid model, allowing staff to work from home 2 or 3 days a week. So I guess these opinions are quite divided about the workspace of this future and what it would look like, especially bearing in mind the varied spectrum of fields that charities work in and their infrastructures. Our speakers today will be sharing their experiences and giving us valuable insights into hybrid working and what this entails, returning to the office and the challenges surrounding this, social care, IT, its risks, the tools needed, alternative plans to fall back on. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the main speaker who will be taking the lead, Philip Anthony, the co-founder of CoopSys, who is enthusiastic about pushing IT forward and with the mantra that IT is a tool to do things better, faster and for less cost. Philip is joined by Kirsty Harrison, who is the operations manager at HYH, Herts Young Homeless, where Kirsty has been working since 2005. And we are also joined, we have Nishal Rupla, who is the head of IT and facilities at the Social Care Institute for Excellence. Nishal is a qualified IT project manager whose progressive career has been developed over a 13-year period. Just before I move over to our speakers, I would like to go over some house rules. At the end of this session, as always, we'll be having a Q&A. So you'll have time to answer your questions or to ask your questions and have these answered by our speakers. You can submit your questions at any time during the webinar by using the Q&A. I'm sure everyone knows where the Q&A button is now. And you can also vote for the question with a thumbs up. So this will move the question up nearer to the top and that will get answered quicker. We also have closed captions available for the webinar. So if you're finding it a bit hard to understand at any time, you can turn these on by clicking on the CC closed captions button, which is in the center of your Zoom console. And we will be recording this session as we do with all of our webinars. And the recording together with the slides and any links or resources will be available in about a week's time. We are all working remotely, so please excuse any background noises and have patience with us if we have any sudden cut or wobble in transmission of any of our speakers today. We will endeavour to resolve any issues as quickly as you can. Use the chat function too. Whenever you like, we love seeing you participate in our webinars. We do glean a lot of information from the stories that you share, any advice and tips given. So join in and feel free to talk to each other and share away. I'm going to disappear now from the screen. So I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to hand you over to our speakers. A very warm welcome to you all. And Phil, I believe you're on next.
Hello, everybody. So welcome to this session on how to prepare your organization for hybrid working. Okay. So the post-pandemic reshaping of the work and the role of IT. So some thoughts on that based on my experience with CoopSys, and also after I've given the presentation from Sky and Herts Young Homeless on what their experience has been. It's not definitive, and I think the biggest takeaway that I'd like people to have is to reflect on their personal experience and what's right for their organization going forward, because everyone's road is going to be slightly different. So just a few words about ourselves, CoopSys. We've been working in the sector for 30 years plus. We work with some 175 not-for-profit or similar organizations at the moment. We jump through various hoops to stay up to speed with what's going on, for example, cloud services. In terms of solutions we're rolling out at the moment, as you might imagine, a lot of pure cloud solutions, some hybrid solutions where people have legacy kit that can't yet go to the cloud, a fair amount of relocations, and I imagine that's going to accelerate over the year as people right-size their organizations. And also we do strategy and policy work, trying to think what's around the corner. So events like this, and trying to engage with clients and the sector as a whole in terms of what we where we should all be heading. So how will we work post-pandemic? As Elizabeth said, BBC News this morning, there were about 3 or 4 stories. The first one I clocked was staff are increasingly asking, can they carry on working from home? And the good news is the government's saying, yes, carry on working from home if you can. But by mid-June, that horizon, it looks like employers are starting to gear up for at least a partial return of everyone. So that's quite a short time frame. We've got about 6 weeks before the expectation is that a fair number of us will be back in the office. Again, as Elizabeth said, 43 of the top 50 firms are planning to work in a hybrid mix of office and home working. And with the organizations we work with, I would say, yes, about 90% of them are not going completely back to the office. Some of them are going completely virtual. And most firms seem to be, at the moment, setting up, and most charitable organizations setting up for a ceiling of about 50% of the workforce in the office come June. So that will be realistically seated at every other desk and gearing up for that. Another article I picked up on was the ongoing change to demands and for shops and cafes in the local economy surrounding offices. And I think that actually is a really big story. There's going to be a massive economic restructuring that we're going to have to adjust to. And there's going to be a fair number of winners and losers in this shake-up. And we're going to have to do a lot of support to make sure that people and certain types of businesses, through no fault of their own, don't get left behind or actually just go bankrupt. And the last story I spotted, which is something that keeps me awake at night, is this situation where millions of home routers are outdated. People never do updates, and I can relate to that. You know, people at home, last thing you want to do is spend your evening updating your router, because if it doesn't update properly, you won't be able to watch Netflix, just at a practical level. So there's that, there's weak passwords. So that's something really that the IT industry is aware of. And they talk about that the internet providers are aware of it, but they're kind of kicking it down the road, partly because of the sheer cost and time of doing it. And it can be a real challenge if you've got limited resources and limited budgets. From an IT perspective, if you're supporting, say, a 10-user organization, in the old days, we used to have to worry about one router and firewall, which was in the office. Now, all of a sudden, you've got to think about 10 routers at people's homes. So that's a multiplication factor of 10. And not only that, usually from an IT perspective, you want everything standardized, whereas at home, of course, people have all kinds of weird and wonderful kit that people aren't familiar with, and teenagers next door playing Call of Duty and all kinds of things that are happening. So some headaches for everyone affected by IT or managing IT. So it's a very hot topic. In some, it's a very messy world going forward. There's some very tough choices we're going to have to make. There's lots of loose ends. We've got finite resources. In fact, budgets are being shrunk because people have less income due to the pandemic. And to be honest, it's less than ideal for everyone. The only comfort you can take is that you're not alone. We're all in the same boat, and hopefully discussion like this will help us make the best of a difficult situation. So to reflect back over the last year, what happened with work and IT in response to the COVID lockdown? Generally speaking, business as usual was the norm. After about March last year, I think we recovered quite quickly. We got used to working from home. And if you look at the economic stats, the outcome was better than people first expected. Tech proved scalable, relatively robust, and people were really flexible. I think we're all flexible because we saw it was a unique situation. Now, as we head back, there's another side to that, because people start to say, do I really want to carry on working like this, being completely flexible? And happily as well, the tools and planning were largely in place. Certainly for most of our customers, we've had or encouraged dialogue around security and business continuity. So we'd had discussions along the lines of what would happen if you couldn't get into your office for a day or a week. To be fair, I don't think we'd envisaged what would happen if you couldn't get into the office for a year. But the fact that we'd moved people into Office 365 and got these remote working solutions in place meant that people could do it. So arguably, if a pandemic was going to happen, there was never a better time. 15 years ago, as I'm sure Nishal would agree, being at the IT coalface, it would have been a much different story. It would have been much tougher. IT was obviously stretched though during the period, and for a lot of our clients it was best endeavors, lots of workarounds. Home router doesn't work, use a 4G connection off a phone. So that was less than ideal. And there was some scrabbling to scale up. There was suddenly tremendous demand for laptops, for example. And I remember in about March last year, I was going to an evening class at Morley College in Waterloo to do painting. And at the tea break, I was talking to a classmate about, what do you do? And I said, oh, IT, it's a nightmare. I need to get 50 laptops for someone. It might have been Herts Young Homeless, who knows? and she said, yeah, we've just ordered 25,000 for the Home Office. I'm like, right, okay. So it's going to be a tricky situation going forward. But given that, we all did pretty well. And lastly, I needed a haircut at the end of it. So the tools that we adopted during the pandemic, some of these will be familiar to you, some of you won't. So I'll just pick up the key ones, and the names, it's worth picking up and having a look, seeing, oh, maybe on the project management side, something could help me. So obviously messaging and email were the really big things. Google Mail, Microsoft Outlook, Teams, they were the big three that were used. Zoom came into its own, Teams came into its own, and happily for a lot of our client base, they were using O365 for email, and most of them hadn't used Teams at all, but it was there ready to go. So that was a lifesaver. And then I think I've got installed on my laptop about 10 other video meeting things, everything from virtual pub quizzes to chatting to relatives, and they're all slightly different. So that was a game changer. Calendars, of course, Exchange. I was also intrigued by some of these apps to build culture. For example, we have got a couple of clients using Strive, and I think it's worth having a look at those, particularly if we're going to continue in this fragmented hybrid, not seeing people very often, looking at those kind of tools. An unsung hero of the pandemic was 4G connectivity. We had quite a lot of clients who had quite poor internet lines, but by using their phone basically as a wireless hotspot, we were able to get them connecting to the internet quite well. And Nishal and I were talking earlier about that situation and how useful it was. So in some Office 365, including Outlook, Teams, SharePoint was the easy, taken for granted go-to. Laptops provided for home use became the norm, and mobiles the norm for email. We also saw a lot of recycling of laptops, wiping them, sticking Windows 10 as an interim measure on. And that was quite successful, because if you're purely using, say, cloud email or a remote desktop connection, you don't necessarily need a very powerful laptop. So some older laptops were given a new lease of life to help kids connect for schoolwork, or as an extra for everyone in the office to be able to work from home. The other side of the IT tools in the pandemic was infrastructure to the cloud, the less visible aspect, if you like, for most people. We'd had some early adopters like Sky who'd started to migrate things through to the cloud. People had embraced Office 365. They'd moved their servers into the cloud with Azure. But what we're starting to see, and I think there's a real opportunity here going forward, is people to make their entire IT infrastructure cloud-based. So to highlight as one example, a project that we're currently working on, the Citizens Advice Bureau team at the Royal Courts of Justice, they provide free advice to those who can't afford commercial, legal advice. We've migrated them, and they're now completely non-location dependent. They're using Teams for all their telephony. They're using Adobe for legal documents. They're using Windows Intune to manage all their devices remotely, to set them up, to wipe them. They're using Azure to have their Active Directory list of all their users and security. And the whole thing is cloud-based, and that's worked really quite well. And it's a very mission-critical project for them, as you might imagine, because it's real time. If someone's case is going to court tomorrow, it is going to court tomorrow. You can't really kick it down the road. So they're the exception. I think in the sector as a whole, there's a lot of organizations that still have to make that leap. And we'd encourage everyone to have a look at that, because there are long-term efficiency gains. There's Microsoft's pricing commitment to charities, so the pricing is really very good. And if you can do something, as we did with RCJ, of spreading the project cost over a period of, say, 2 to 3 years, it's less painful. We also saw a lot of CRM systems start to be migrated to the cloud. That's going relatively smoothly. Perhaps slower is the accountancy side. The accountancy side seems to be more legacy, and we've got quite a lot of organisations that still have a server that's, and I think Herts Young Homeless might be one, where at the moment they've got to keep the accountancy system running on the server, because it's a big migration. So steadily progressing with the tools. We've got the end user tools on your laptop and your phone, and then we've got this back office movement to the cloud. Reflecting on what happened for individuals, and this is my personal experience. First of all, I loved it. I loved working from home. It was great. I could watch the telly, do my work, have a nap. And now we're starting to come out the other side. People saying, do I really need to go back to the office? And why not? Because people have better work-life balance. We want to have our cake and eat it, and that seems great. But now, if I put a different hat on as a manager, I'm like, I want to see some of these people again. I want to talk to them, particularly the less experienced people, or within any organization, you've got the people who just crack on if they're not micromanaged, and the people that you need to, who are great, but you need to sit in front of them and check, have you done so and so, every so often. So ourselves and most people we talk to do want to have people back into the office for some of the time, but there is a consensus that that's not going to be 5 days a week. And I think what's been really useful with major events in human history, and be it wars or plagues, sadly, they're the things that move things along. Pre-pandemic, I think generally a lot of managers were not trusting enough of their workforce to say, yes, you can work from home. They were fearful of it, but now it's happened, and the genie's out of the bottle. We've got used to it, and we're learning how to manage that situation. So events force change, but once change has happened, it has a habit of sticking around. So I was thinking how in World War II, a lot more women entered the workforce because they had to become the jobs where people were off in the forces. And this picture of a guy there loading the, what is it called? Washing machine. And I seem to have acquired that role again. And I don't know how that happened, but I've got a feeling it's going to stick. So it's going to lead to quite a big shake-up in working practices. I think the biggest one since the Industrial Revolution, when the Victorians invented the 9 to 5 Monday to Friday week. And I think it's going to be really good for work-life balance and family life. So the pros and cons of home working, just to run through this, and I think it's probably worth everyone doing their own little sheet as an individual and for the organization they work with. Some of the main things on the advantages: flexible schedule, custom environment. So I find myself, I'm laptop and phone, and I didn't used to be that way in the office, but now phone is my go-to for email and laptop for working. Cozy clothes, wearing track pants, love it. Easier to make calls. As a manager, I certainly find that, you know, like most people, we had an open plan office, so I was constantly dashing in the corridor if someone wanted to have a private discussion with me. People knocking off non-work tasks, that's wonderful. And even though it's valid for people to do that, again, in an open plan environment, people can often feel a bit timid about making a call to get the washing machine serviced, etc. No office distractions, pros and cons on that for me. But if you've got to do something like put together a PowerPoint presentation for a charity digital thing, it's much easier to do it out of the office. Zero commuting, a big one for many people. You know, for a lot of people, they're getting 2 hours extra back into their day. Sure, you can read on the train, but it's not always is that easy. Saving money, there's a lot of people saving, like if they're Londoners, £3,000 to £4,000 a year not commuting. Less crowds, more calm, and most importantly, this work-life balance, more time with loved ones. On the disadvantage side, these slides I found I had 10, and I think some of them are a bit weak. As a manager, people's willpower, sticking to routines, boredom, working slowly are concerns for me, because some people do need a little checking in. At a practical level, things like second monitors, where people need that, we've sanctioned it. It's £100. It's a no-brainer. Iffy Wi-Fi can be a headache, and it's a headache with some of our staff. It's a headache with clients, and people can get frustrated because often it's an intractable problem. It's a problem you can't get to the bottom of, other than changing provider, or you've got a dodgy box at the telephone exchange and you switch to 4G. And they've got in here had in there power naps. And for me, power naps should be an advantage, because I love having a 30-minute power nap after lunch, and I couldn't do that in the office. It sets me up for the rest of the day. So work-life balance, big win. On the negative side, I worry about loss of the micro communication that you get in offices. So in my office, when I sit in a group of 5-6 people with our service desk, and you overhear things, and people chip in and say things, and there's lots of little inputs that happen in the day. And I know from talking to clients that that's a similar worry that people have. So there can be a culture loss. So to conclude again, I suggest to people have a think about what it means to you. What are the pros and cons? What does hybrid working look like in practice? So working in the office, we're familiar with, working in home, but I'd also add working anywhere, which is something that's not considered too much. Back in the cafes when we can, people working overseas. We've actually got a surprising number of people who are working overseas, who went overseas. A lot of them didn't talk about it, but it's more common than was thought. So we've got some real game changers. In general, with hybrid working, there's much more mobility. It's laptops on the go, not PCs on a desk, so you have bare desks, mobiles and Teams, so calls going through to your mobile for a Teams call, no phone on the desk. So you get this bare desk situation, which I love personally. And for most organizations, including ourselves, that means some reshaping, because when you go back in and you dust off the cobwebs, a lot of places, you know, you're just back there with your PC, so you're going to need to change to be COVID safe going forward and to accommodate people coming in with their laptops. So I started to wonder, what will people's individual stories be? So talking to clients and saying, what are you going to do? We've got some organizations want everyone back. They see more typically organizations that have people coming to them, perhaps in the social care environment, where they've got to be hands-on. We've got organizations that are totally virtual. For ourselves, the lease in our London office expired in October, and that means for about 7 months we've been saving about £6,000 or £7,000 a year on not needing it. We are just about to sign a new lease, but we could have gone completely virtual arguably. Right sizing is going to happen. Everyone talks about right sizing, not downsizing, which amuses me. And that will be very common with hybrid working, because if you've only got half the people in half the time, you need fewer desks. And I imagine a lot of the big office providers like Workspace might start partitioning up their bigger spaces. Features of hybrid offices: we've got hot desking, naked desks, breakout spaces, lockers for staff. A concern I have is this thing from 1984, home is the office, office is the home, freedom is slavery. Where's the boundaries? You know, people can suddenly find, you know, there is no, when they're at home, they're always on. So I think that's something that needs to be thought about. So I think with your team, it's worth having discussions on agreeing the way forward, positive engagement, not full and frank exchange of views, so it gets a bit shouty. Start to get ready now, because it's only about 6 weeks. Maybe appoint a restart czar or a little team to look at things. If you don't do that, you'll find things evolve in a less than ideal way. You'll have some people who just disappear, doing their own thing, different policies. It was raised yesterday with us, will we be allowed to bring dogs in the office? Like, I'd never even thought about it. Why would anyone want to do that? But if you open that up, then surely you've got to let everyone do it. So you're going to have to develop consistent policies, but flex as we go, because the first time right is often rare. So some of the challenges going forward, these are some I've identified. I suspect there's a lot more. Cyber essentials, getting people to consistently use cybersecurity when they're at home, where they've got a different mindset and they feel it's less important. Who's going to hack my Netflix, etc. So we were trying to encourage all our client base to go through cyber essentials. And the bar is raised on that now, because the standard starts to look at what kit people have at home, and gathering, and believe you me, gathering that information can be a real challenge. So that's an issue. GDPR, data protection, is a challenge. When the pandemic first broke, I think we were all happy for people to work on anything. Yeah, download that document, do it. But now there's more concern that documents are accessed in the right way, and sensitive stuff is not downloaded to people's laptops or onto phones. So it's worth revisiting that and getting a grip. Well, seeing Q&As up there. See, I'm not used to see this tech. I'm not used to Zoom. I'm more of a Teams man. Shall I go into some of those? Okay, bear with. Okay, so these questions, I'll revisit them at the end because there's quite a few.
Yeah, we will have the Q&A at the end, Philip. Yeah. So yeah, we've got quite a bit of time to go over those questions. So you just plow ahead.
I'll plow on. How far am I in? Oh.
It's 1:30.
Okay, 10 more minutes. Costs can be significant. Big change. If you're paying for all that kit for people to work from home and their licenses and possibly even their lines and maybe insurance, that's a big bite out of budget. So think about that. Who's going to pay for kit? IT policies and HR policies need to apply to personal kit at home, and also some of the HR policies may need to apply to how people work at home. Always on duty, I've mentioned. And then in the small print here, stuff beyond the scope of this issue, this discussion, but really big issues are things like organisation culture, employment contracts, managing people, starting people, productivity, staff retention. We lost someone in the pandemic that we just hired, and that was all because we didn't communicate with him, sadly. So lessons learned there for me. Some of the solutions to these challenges: plan for the issues, work through them, have team meets, individual engagement, look for and ask for win-win situations. So we've got some organisations that have agreed things like salary sacrifice for equipment. You want to work from home 2.5 days a week, that's great. You're not paying commutes. Would you mind paying a bit towards your laptop? And look at being flexible and let the best way forward evolve. Oh, I'm frozen. Quick word on nobody left behind, bridging the digital divide. So one of the things I'm worried about and I've seen is that working from home accentuates the digital divide. Not everyone has the resources needed at home. Maybe they've got ropey laptops, poor connections. The adaptation to next gen tech such as SharePoint can be hard if people are used to simple mapped drives. You need to avoid over complexity of systems. At CoopSys, daily people add new functionality to our core system, and it can be quite challenging. I'd encourage people to standardize as much as possible. For the Apple lovers here, I'll say, are you going to support Apple equipment as well as mainstream PC equipment? You can, but that's an extra cost you need to bear in mind. And most importantly, recognize people may be reluctant to ask for help. People are very wary of saying, I don't know how to do this. And I think that's particularly true at the top of the chain with senior managers. So see if you can set up some support frameworks for people, online tutorials so people can quietly get started, general ones and specific ones. Team and one-to-one sessions are very useful to verify that people can manage your systems and do what you want them to. Talk to your tech support providers about how they can work with you to help people, and do an inventory, find out what kit is in use, because that can be quite revealing that someone's trying to use something back from the ark that is just not suitable for what you're trying to do. And lastly, last slide, IT and risk. IT is rubbish. You heard it here first. I've been working in this industry for 30 years. It just packs up on you when you least want that to happen. So you've got to have a plan B. This came home to me a couple of years ago. I was waiting for a friend in Italy at an airport. My phone died. My laptop had frozen midway through an update, and I had to leg my way into a lounge to connect to the office and email my friend. So you've got to have a plan B. So if you're using Outlook, have it on your phone and laptop. If you're just relying on Office 365, that may go down. Use something like Mimecast as well. Internet connection, it's when your line will fail, not if. So can you connect via a hotspot, Wi-Fi? Can you use your laptop or a phone? And I've got a little picture there because you can actually use your phone as, if you use remote desktop connections, you can use your phone as a PC if you need to. So my last point on this slide is, with everyone working from home, there's a big amount of trust there. So there's some responsibility, and someone saying, oh, I couldn't work all day because my internet died is a bit 2021 version of my pens run out miss. So there's a thought that, you know, IT will collapse. Some useful links and resources are stuck in there that are worth a look at. I'll put my email if you want to email me directly. That brings us on to the discussion part. Elizabeth, do you want to jump back in?
Yes, I wonder whether they could bring in our other speakers now. That would be a good opportunity. Kirsty and Michelle, if you want to sort of go over your experiences and maybe share with us a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So we've recently moved to SharePoint at the end of March, which was a huge thing for us. We had about 6 to 9 months in the planning for it. We did sort of differ a couple of times, like, is this the right time to do it in the middle of a pandemic? But we thought the more we keep putting it off, the harder it's going to be. So we've put a lot of preparation into it. Just to give you a little background, we had everybody in the office Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. And then when we found that we were going to send people working from home, we did have a remote server, but that was initially set up for maybe 3 or 4 people to work from home at a time. And then all of a sudden it was just under 50 people trying to log on every day. So you can imagine that took quite a lot of resource, and it was very painful for staff when they were working on it. So we started at the beginning. We had a meeting with CoopSys and we said, this is what we've got now. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. And this is how we'd like it to be. So where do we go from here? And that's when they came back to us and they gave us a couple of options. And we looked at SharePoint. We had previously tried to move to SharePoint about 5 years prior, and it didn't work very well for us. So we were a little bit, when SharePoint came back up, we were like, I don't know if we want to do that again. That didn't work too well. But Chris at CoopSys assured me, and we had a demo, and I was like, okay, actually, there's a lot of cost savings in that compared to having a brand new remote server. So we had a little demo of that, and it seemed to work quite well. We thought, okay, staff are going to transition to that quite well, because we wanted the traditional layout of a file explorer system, so that when people moved over to it, they'd be comfortable with it. And I have to say, it went really well. We had a little test group first, and they did it, and we ironed out any issues. And then we did training with CoopSys. So the lovely Derek came and gave all the staff, and we did training with them in small groups so that they felt comfortable if they wasn't sure about something, or if they wanted to ask something. And like Derek was very good. He was like, you can email me afterwards and I'll let you know, in case they weren't comfortable saying in the middle of the training they didn't understand it. And then we did the switch over at the end, and it just went really, really well. I think for us though, one thing I would say that was quite good for us is because the remote server was so bad, the buy-in was already there for the new product. So when we said to them, okay, right, guys, we're going to do this, we're going to move to SharePoint, you won't have to go on the remote server anymore. Everybody was like, yes, I'm in, we can do that. So I think that went really well for us.
So that was a real key point for you, wasn't it? Sort of that remote server. Yes. Yeah. And Nisha, what can you give us some words of wisdom? Can you give us your experience here?
Sure, Liz. So at Sky, we had an in-house data center, and we had everything in that data center. It ran a Hyper-V environment, and we started that, about 20 years ago, and it's been supported by CoopSys for that period of time. And I've been closely monitoring the cloud situation and how it's evolving. And for many years, I was not completely comfortable with it because I didn't feel it was mature enough. I didn't feel that you could run a proper virtual network on it. And now I think it's reached that stage where with Intune and the other functionality on 365, you can control the network virtually. And I'm comfortable now that the security is enhanced and you can get the functionality you after. So in these last 2 years, I've been working closely with CoopSys engineers, and we had the plan developed, and we are slowly moving functionality from the data center into the cloud. And I've already seen great benefits to it. I mean, the email system is up there. The file system is now being moved to SharePoint, which sits as a backend to Teams, and that's working really well. And for me, the key is, like Kirsty mentioned, staff want to be able to access those files in an easy way. They're quite used to File Explorer. And with Teams, the files that sits there, even though they're in SharePoint in the backend, you can make them appear as virtual drives in File Explorer. And my staff who have tested that so far are very happy with it. They can access all their files, logging onto office.com anywhere, and I know it's secure. We have a backup system in place as well. So slowly, I'm moving the data center completely to the cloud. We spoke about the finance systems. I mean, we've had finance, Microsoft Dynamics in-house for all this time. And we've taken the decision to move that into the Microsoft platform, and we went for Business Central. It has worked out really, really well, because apart from the finance system, it's now linked to the project management system, and the financial data that you get out of it is really, really good. It's all in the cloud, it's easy to access, it's all accessed with the same login from office.com, and the benefits we see is really, really good. So I'm completely happy with that. In terms of hybrid working, for me, it's about finding the right combination of functionality to allow staff to do their jobs properly, but most important, to keep them happy. I feel if they're happy, they'll be effective. And I'm still trying to find that combination. I think we are getting there. We are at the moment leaving our office as well. I managed to have some friendly conversations with our landlord. In fact, I contacted one of the sons. They're a billionaire family via Facebook, and had conversations, and they're allowing us to leave our lease, which is a tremendous saving. So I'm using some of that money to pump into IT and get the IT infrastructure correct. So we're at that stage now where things are taking shape, and I'm comfortable that with the right combination, we'll get the hybrid working correct.
That's really interesting. So you actually came to taking that big plunge, haven't you, of that's it, no more lease, and sort of working in this hybrid environment. And Kirsty, did you want to just add just a little bit more before we move over to the questions?
Yeah, just to say, in terms of the actual hybrid working, we actually reopened the office 3 weeks ago. So we put staff into 2 bubbles. So we have bubble 1 that goes in on a Monday and Tuesday, and then we have bubble 2 that goes in on a Thursday and Friday. We've found that most staff have taken that up. I'm not sure if it's the nature of the work that we do, that the support workers, as you can imagine, with what you're dealing with on a daily basis and you're at home, you need the support of your colleagues. So actually being in the office, and albeit not all of your colleagues, but you've got some of your team there, you've got some of the other teams, just having that interaction with people, it seems to have worked really well, having the 2 days in with your team and then 3 days working from home. And I think when you touched on it earlier, Phil, it's really important to have those little conversations and hear what's going on for other people, hear what the other teams are doing, so you're all working as one. We're just looking at, we've left it optional at the moment, but we're looking in line with the government that around June time we might enforce it, that staff have to come in on their bubble days. But it seems to work really well for us, and staff have really enjoyed coming back to the office.
So really your staff have jumped at that, haven't they? So yeah. I think it's got to the point that staff are really quite desperate to get back into socializing again as well. It's been really, really interesting, and we're going to be moving over to the questions and answers, but I think just a few things for me. Phil, I really like that quote that freedom is slavery. And I've sort of felt that I can really identify with that, because working from home, we are a slave to our laptops, aren't we, at any time of the day? And hybrid working, like I've been listening, is and how it can sort of support and improve mental well-being and physical well-being, because you've got extra time, you know, to do those activities, and you're saving money as well. But there are specific challenges. So let's go into our questions now. Kirsty, Nishal and Philip, if you can just like have a look at those questions, and if there's any particular one that you would like to answer, then please let me know. Let's go to the one that has been voted right up at the top, and this is from Claire Bowers, who says, with a mix of working from home and in the office, we have the challenge of what to say to colleagues about having the right desk equipment at home. Sorry, I've just lost it. It's come back. A chair and desk. We can't afford to pay for equipment for people, so would be keen to hear what other charities are doing. Now, Kirsty, that just follows on. You've gone back 3 weeks ago. Can you give a bit of advice on this one?
So what we did, we were very fortunate that most staff had what they needed, but we had quite a few that we might have had specific equipment for them if they've got a back condition or something. So what we've done is we'd let them take the equipment home with them so they could set themselves up properly. And then when they've come back to the office, they've brought it back with them. It is a tricky one. We did also roll out some training on how to set up your workstation as best you can to mitigate any problems you might get. It is really tricky in terms of, as a charity, finding the money, though. That's all I could suggest, is that we loaned it to them.
Yeah. Okay. Would anyone else like to just comment on that before we move over to another one, if someone wants to grab it? We have...
oh, can I just say that on the chairs and desk things, there's with people downsizing, I'll say it, there's a lot of desks and chairs going spare. Look on eBay and places like that, and you can get some really good office kit at really good prices. Just an observation.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Phil. Thanks. I'm just going to move over to the highest voted ones. Okay, if you want to pick one up, then just let me know. Lucy Potter, can you tell us a bit more about the apps that help strengthen company culture? We have mentioned quite a few. Is there any more that we would like to go over, or anything in particular?
Well, the mainstream ones that we touched on, and I saw that question and thought, no, because I've got to look at the specific cultural apps. I need to take a look at myself, because I thought, oh, that's interesting. How do they work? Because I haven't had a chance to look at those yet. But so I don't have more, unless Nishal and Kirsty have more on those.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the mainstream apps, for me, the most important thing is when we work from home, we need to still retain that element of getting people together. We need to have those events. Like I'm finding places for our staff event, for the team meetings. People need to get together 2, 3, 4 times a month. And for me, that is what to do. And if you keep that going, you will get there properly. Yes, agreed. Okay, let's move over to a question from Andrea Smart, who says, we are keen to support hybrid working across our team of 22 people. We do want to bring the whole team together on a regular basis, monthly team meetings. Are there any approaches or technologies you can suggest that might support this, with a mixture of people in the office and people working from home? That just follows up what you were just saying there, Nisha, that you have to have those meetings as a team, don't you? You need to keep people together.
Well, to jump in on that one, I think that's quite an easy one. I'd say try out Teams. If you have Office 365, it's there. If you haven't got Office 365, get it, because it costs peanuts to get, and try it, or Zoom if you prefer, like this, and just have a few meetings. It'll be a bit ropey at first, but once you get used to it, it works quite well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have a question from Jonathan Garcia, who says, are there any IT policies examples we can use? Good question, huh?
It's a thing that's developing, but that's homework for me, actually. I'll take that away. I put my email in the slides, and I know that various groups we're working with have worked on that, and maybe what we should do is put them together to give something that's generically useful, or a starting point. So I'll take that as a takeaway, that we should do.
And also I got a virtual working group set up, and we're looking at all policies for a completely virtual office. And I'm happy to share that at some point.
That would be fantastic. Great. Okay, thank you. Jessica, are there any apps, tools you'd recommend for booking meetings, hot desks, when some staff do return to the office?
I would say that we tend to have the calendar within Outlook. So for all our resources, we just name it in there. So it's easy and it's already in the package for everybody. You can book it that way.
Yeah, we use Outlook all the time. I don't know whether anyone else uses anything else that you found useful, helpful.
We've got some clients using specialist room booking software, so it does exist, but unless you're really doing something like an event, you're an event organizer or something, I think a shared Outlook calendar is fine. We'll give you everything that you need.
Okay, Rosario is saying, should the company contribute to staff members' broadband, heating and electricity if they require them to work from home 50% of the time? I would like to know this actually for Charity Digital. No.
Well, there's this government, you can give, I think it's £25, is it, a month, towards people's working costs from home. So we do that with staff because it isn't a huge amount, and we say that's a contribution towards Wi-Fi, etc. Should people pay more is a moot point. So I've always thought that deals on salary where someone takes a laptop or towards travel costs are a good thing because they're tax-free. So it's worth exploring those options. I'd say to people. I don't know what Nish will do and Kirsty.
So what we've done is, previously we used to pay 50% of broadband, but now the usage of broadband has changed tremendously, where it's much needed in the household. It's not just for working. People used to come to the office and they paid a lot for transport costs. But now that is being saved, as well as clothing costs, laundry costs and things. So we try to work it out such that it's expected that people would provide certain things from home, considering that they're making a saving elsewhere. And we're finding that balance.
Yeah, I agree with you completely there, definitely. Yes, we are also getting lots of chats going on, so check out the chats there. People are giving advice and tips, so that's great. And Anonymous, we are a small charity and permanent working from home is looking like a great option for us in terms of saving money. Some of our staff are a little bit resilient. How do you deal with this? Reluctant would be the word.
It's a toughie, isn't it? Because I think you just have to just do it. We're doing this and give people support. But I know for some people, working from home at a practical level can be difficult. You know, if they live in London, they might be sharing a one-bed flat with their partner, and they physically don't have the space. So it can be challenging. I think it's the road to go down, but have discussions with individuals like, why are you resistant? How can we make it easier for you? You know, we mentioned chairs before and desks and second screens. Those have relatively small costs compared to the cost the organisation could be saving on rent. So it's worth seeing what kind of little micro deals you could reach with people.
It's been quite a long time, hasn't it, that people have been at home. We have to remember that as well.
And I would think to complement the permanent working from home is to, on a flexible offers, at least get 1 or 2 hot desks. So for people that do have the one-bed flat, you know, they have the option to go and use a desk somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on because we've got loads of questions to get through. We have fallen in love with Chromebooks. This is Borsola. As you don't need to buy Office and you can also manage web viewing easily. Who else has fallen in love with Chromebooks?
I've got one. It's Horses for Courses, and if it fits your needs, absolutely great. It's a low-cost way of doing things. If you get people wanting you to install lots of different apps, then it's can be a bit more limited on the processing power, for example. But if it fits your needs, absolutely, don't spend money for sake of.
Yes, definitely. Caroline is asking here, something we did over the last year was to provide them with equipment from the office, so we didn't need to pay for things. We had some space. Now, that's a really good point. I think that was directed towards Claire, her question there. So thank you, Caroline, for that. Now we move over to Peter Giles, who's saying, how do you recommend coping with the issue of not being able to get a quick response because the relevant person is not answering phones or emails? Maybe a Teams, get them on Teams and get them to answer that way.
You call them on their mobile. It can be a challenge. Yeah.
Do you do you have WhatsApps? Do you sort of WhatsApp people or?
Yeah. And I think you need to assess there whether it's a one-off or it's habitual. If it's habitual, then it's probably more of a management issue that needs to be sorted.
Okay, moving over to Dawn, who is asking, what is the recommendation for secure authentication processing if moving to almost complete cloud-based, if moving away from a remote server access?
I'd start the ball rolling in on this, but then I'd be interested to hear what Kirsty and Nishal have to say. So with Office 365, which Microsoft Active Directory, which underpins most of what the client base uses, you can set up two-factor authentication and get an SMS text to your mobile. And a lot of our clients who need better security use that approach. If security's not that great, an issue, people use straightforward password logins and double password because they'll use a VPN login as well. And one or two people, they use iris recognition to open up their laptops and mobiles. So there's lots of options out there. It's really how deep and secure you want to go.
Yeah, I agree there. I think it's how deep you want to go, because two-factor encryption is there, and if you've got servers in the cloud that's really sensitive, then you can use VPN to those servers.
Okay, thank you. Kirsty, did you just want to mention anything on that?
It's just to say that we've done the same. Obviously, we've gone to SharePoint and we've got Office 365, so we've got the multi-factor authentication. I don't know about other charities, but we only use work devices. So they only have a work laptop and a work mobile phone, and making sure that mobile phone has also got MDM on it to keep that secure. Okay, thank you. Well, I think we've just got time for really one more question. And this is from David. Much emphasis is placed on home worker. What are you aware of in regard to the managers of home workers, especially those who micromanage?
Leading question. Do you know, I think if you have someone who micromanages you, working from home can be fantastic relief from that, because you get a bit more space. And if you're a person who, and I have colleagues who like to micromanage people, this has been a help for them as well, because they have to let go a bit. It's a brave new world. Can I just pick up on Louise's question there?
Yes, please, go ahead.
About parity of treatment of staff. It's a challenge, frankly, because you've got these conflicting forces. You've got your need to maximize your budget. You've got your desire to help everyone do what they want to do. And also, you know, as an organization, you want to have standard policies. I fully get that. So it's trying to negotiate what's the best option for your particular culture and organization, I feel.
Yeah, okay. I think that we've had just so many questions on this. It's been an absolutely fantastic topic. What we will take those questions offline, and we will probably look at them over, and we will collate the questions, and then we will follow up with sort of answers to those questions. I would like to say a massive thanks to Kirsty, to Philip, to Nishal for delivering a great session. Thank you. We really needed another hour, didn't we, to cover all of it. I'm absolutely sure that it's been great food for thought for everybody. You can go away with ideas and inspiration on how to proceed with future plans on a hybrid working. I've got 1 minute left just to wrap up, and I'm going to say that we do have a podcast coming up next Tuesday with Salesforce, so keep an eye out for that. And our next event will be on Be More Digital Marketing Day on the 20th of May. So that's Be More Digital Marketing. It's going to be a full day of inspiring sessions from charity and tech experts, and it'll be focused on digital marketing. So check out our website for that to sign up. Our next webinar will be on the 3rd of June, and more information will follow on that. So it just leaves me to say a great, massive thank you so much to you all. And I really look forward to talking to our audience again via chats, and to seeing you all and engaging in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nishal. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Thank you.